A shy black teen in thrift-store clothes stood awkwardly in a luxury wedding hall, a single piece of paper clutched in his hand. It was a charity raffle ticket he'd bought with his last $10. The bride, a vision in white, spotted him from across the glittering room. A cruel laugh escaped her lips as she pointed him out to her friends. In a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, she called him lost and said he was too cheap to belong here. What she didn't know was that the raffle prize wasn't some simple gift basket or a dinner coupon. The prize was ownership of the very foundation she had spent the entire evening bragging about controlling. When the teen's number was called, the entire ballroom would fall silent. In that moment of stunning silence, she would finally realize that the nobody she had mocked and tried to throw out now owned the very thing she pretended to give, the very source of her false generosity. She would learn that he owned everything. Before we find out what happens next, let us know in the comments what city you're watching from. And if this story is already hitting home, make sure you hit that like button. The ballroom was a galaxy of shimmering lights. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen constellations, casting a brilliant glow over the sea of guests below. Each person was dressed in their finest attire, a collection of expensive suits and elegant gowns that moved and mingled like a living tapestry of wealth. The air buzzed with polite conversation and the soft clinking of champagne glasses, a symphony of privilege conducted in a hall built for kings. At the center of it all, gliding through the crowd with the unshakable confidence of a queen in her court, was Madison Lee. She was the bride, and this was her kingdom. Her wedding dress, a masterpiece of silk and lace, trailed behind her like a regal train, catching the light with every step she took. She didn't just walk, she made an entrance over and over again, her smile a carefully practiced display of perfect happiness. The charity raffle, the supposed reason for this grand event, was about to begin, but no one was looking at the stage. All eyes were on Madison. She was the main event, the star around which every other person in the room orbited. Then a quiet figure slipped through the grand double doors, a small island of stillness in the swirling current of the party. It was Jordan Carter. He was 17, with a polite posture and eyes that took in everything with a nervous energy. He wore a simple button-down shirt, neatly pressed but clearly not from a designer boutique, and a pair of dark trousers that had seen better days. They were his best clothes, chosen with care, but in this room, they made him feel like an intruder. In his hand, he clutched two things: a single raffle ticket, its edges softened from being held so tightly, and a small sealed envelope. He felt a deep, gnawing unease as he stood near the entrance, the sheer scale of the luxury around him making him feel smaller and more out of place with every passing second. He had a right to be here, he told himself. He had bought a ticket just like everyone else, but his heart still pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of anxiety. Madison's perfectly curated path through her adoring guests eventually brought her gaze to the entrance. Her smile, which had been so wide and bright, faltered for a fraction of a second. Her eyes narrowed, scanning Jordan from head to toe in a single dismissive sweep. She saw his simple clothes, his nervous stance, and the dark color of his skin, and her mind made a swift, cruel calculation. He did not belong. A frown creased her brow, a tiny crack in her flawless facade. Then it was gone, replaced by a sharp, brittle laugh that cut through the low hum of the room. "Oh, look," she announced to her circle of friends, her voice dripping with amusement. "Who let the janitor's kid in?" A few of her guests chuckled along with her, their laughter hesitant and uneasy. They glanced from Madison's smug face to the young man standing by the door, a wave of discomfort rippling through the immediate area. The rest of the room began to quiet down, conversations dying as people turned to see the source of the bride's sudden outburst. Jordan felt a hot flush of shame creep up his neck. His face burned, and for a moment he wanted nothing more than to turn and run, to disappear back into the night where he felt he belonged. But he thought of the reason he came, and he found a small, hidden well of courage. He took a hesitant step forward, his voice barely a whisper but clear in the growing silence. "I came for the raffle drawing," he said, holding up the ticket as if it were a shield. "I have a ticket." Madison's smirk widened. She took a step closer to him, her movement slow and deliberate, enjoying the full attention of her audience. "Honey," she said, her tone a condescending mix of pity and scorn, "this event is for donors, people who give, not for door crashers looking for a free meal." Her words were like stones, each one landing with a heavy thud in the pit of his stomach. Jordan's resolve hardened. He met her gaze, his own eyes steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I bought my ticket," he insisted, his voice a little stronger now. "Fair and square, with my own money." The bride's amusement vanished, replaced by a flash of cold fury. This boy was ruining her perfect moment. He was a stain on her perfect wedding. She would not have it. With a dramatic sigh, she turned and waved a hand in the air, a dismissive gesture of command. "Security!" she called out, her voice sharp and imperious. "Can someone please handle this? We have a trespasser." A thick, heavy silence fell over the ballroom. The polite chatter, the clinking glasses, the soft music. It all stopped. Every guest froze, their eyes locked on the unfolding drama at the entrance. The air grew tense, charged with a mixture of shock and embarrassment. Tyler Vaughn, the groom, stood near the stage, his expression clouded with confusion and discomfort. He started to move toward his fiancée, a question forming on his lips. But Madison's pride was a blazing inferno now, too hot for anyone to approach. She stood with her chin held high, a triumphant glint in her eyes, certain she had won. Two burly security guards began to make their way toward Jordan, their faces grim and professional. Cameras, which had been capturing the bride's every glamorous move, now turned to document this new, ugly spectacle. The flashes were like small bursts of lightning, illuminating Jordan's face, capturing his humiliation for all to see. He didn't wait for the guards to reach him. He lowered his head, the shame too heavy to bear, and turned away. As he walked out the door, the whispers started, a venomous hiss that followed him into the cold night air, leaving him utterly and completely alone. The ornate ballroom doors swung shut behind him, muffling the sounds of the party and leaving Jordan in the sudden, quiet chill of the evening. He walked down the grand stone steps of the venue and sat on the cold concrete, the rough texture a stark contrast to the plush carpets inside. The night air was cool against his flushed cheeks. He unclenched his fist, his knuckles white from the pressure, and stared down at the crumpled raffle ticket in his palm. Number 472. It seemed so small, so insignificant, a flimsy piece of paper that had led to so much pain. He had spent weeks saving up the $10 to buy it, money earned from doing odd jobs after school. It had felt like an investment in hope, a connection to a cause that meant everything to him. Now, it just felt like a ticket to humiliation. He felt a lump form in his throat, a tight, burning knot of sadness and anger. He wanted to rip the ticket into 1,000 tiny pieces and let the wind carry them away. But something stopped him. Some small, stubborn part of him refused to let her break him completely. A soft voice startled him from his thoughts. "Here," it said. "You look like you could use this." He looked up to see a young woman in a black and white server's uniform. She was holding out a glass of ice water, a kind and worried expression on her face. Her name was Elena, and she had been clearing tables near the entrance when Madison had made her cruel scene. She had watched the whole thing, her heart aching for the boy who had been treated with such casual disdain. Jordan took the glass, his fingers brushing against hers. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice hoarse. He took a long, slow sip, the cold water soothing the fire in his throat. Elena sat down on the step next to him, careful not to spill the tray she was still holding. "I saw what happened in there," she said gently. "That was awful. No one deserves to be treated like that." Jordan just nodded, his eyes fixed on the ticket. He didn't have the energy to explain, to defend himself. "Why were you so set on being at the raffle?" Elena asked, her curiosity overriding her professional distance. "If you don't mind me asking." For a moment, Jordan didn't answer. He just traced the numbers on the ticket with his finger. Then he took a deep breath, and the story tumbled out, quiet and full of a pain that was years old. "The raffle," he began, his voice barely audible. "It supports the Valerie Hope Foundation. It's a scholarship fund." He paused, swallowing hard. "It once helped my mom, my late mom. Her name was Valerie." He finally looked at Elena, and she could see the raw grief in his young eyes. "I saved up to buy that ticket because it felt like a way to honor her, to be a part of something good she believed in." Elena was stunned into silence. The sheer, simple goodness of his intentions, contrasted with the ugly arrogance she had just witnessed inside, was staggering. The boy hadn't been a door crasher or an opportunist. He was there to honor his mother's memory. A wave of anger on his behalf washed over her. "Why didn't you tell them that?" she asked, her voice filled with a fierce indignation. "Why didn't you say that to her face?" Jordan gave a small, weary shrug, a gesture that spoke of a lifetime of being overlooked and misunderstood. "People like her," he said, his voice flat with a resignation that was heartbreaking in someone so young. "They don't listen. They just see what they want to see. To her, I was just some poor kid who didn't fit in with her perfect party. The truth wouldn't have mattered." Elena knew he was right, and it made her even more furious. She looked at his dignified, composed face and felt a powerful surge of protectiveness. This wasn't right. It couldn't end like this. "I'll find a way to make this right," she promised, her voice low but firm. "I don't know how yet, but I will." Inside the ballroom, the brief drama had subsided and the party was getting back on track. Martin Dale, the slick and polished MC, took the stage, his voice booming through the microphone. "All right, everyone, the moment you've all been waiting for. The grand prize drawing for the Valerie Hope Foundation charity raffle will be happening very, very soon." A polite ripple of applause went through the crowd. Outside, Jordan heard the announcement. He looked down at the ticket one last time at the number 472. He thought of his mother, of her unwavering belief in kindness and hope. He thought of Madison's sneering face and the sting of her words. Then he thought of the quiet promise from the waitress, a complete stranger who had shown him more decency in 2 minutes than the bride had in her entire life. A flicker of determination ignited within him. He wasn't going to let Madison Lee have the last word. He wasn't going to let her erase his mother's memory from this night. Taking a deep breath, he stood up, his shoulders a little straighter than before. He tucked the ticket safely into his pocket and walked back toward the glittering ballroom, his heart pounding not with fear but with a new, uncertain resolve. He slipped back inside, unnoticed this time, melting into the shadows at the very back of the room. From a discreet table near the side of the ballroom, a distinguished-looking older man watched the boys return. His face was calm, his expression unreadable, but his eyes followed Jordan with a keen, thoughtful intensity. It was Judge Avery Carter, and he had seen everything. Tyler Vaughn stood by the side of the stage, a fake smile plastered on his face as he shook hands with another one of Madison's father's business associates. On the surface, everything was perfect. The music was elegant, the food was exquisite, and his bride was the radiant center of attention. But underneath the perfect veneer, a deep sense of unease was gnawing at him. The scene at the entrance had replayed in his mind a dozen times, each time leaving a more sour taste in his mouth. The way Madison had laughed, the cold, dismissive cruelty in her voice as she mocked that young boy, it had unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. The guests were whispering. He could see it in their furtive glances and hushed conversations. The mood in the room had shifted, the celebratory air now tinged with a subtle, uncomfortable tension. He excused himself and found Madison preening for a photographer near the towering wedding cake. He pulled her aside, his grip on her arm a little tighter than he intended. "What was that all about?" he asked, his voice low and strained, trying to keep the anger out of it. "Why did you do that to him?" Madison pulled her arm away, her perfect smile momentarily replaced by a frown of annoyance. "Do what to who?" she asked, feigning ignorance. "Oh, you mean that boy? Tyler, please. He looked like he wandered in from the street. It was embarrassing." She smoothed down the front of her gown as if brushing away an invisible speck of dirt. "This is our wedding, darling. It's an exclusive event. It's not a soup kitchen." Tyler's face tightened. Every word she spoke felt like a small betrayal. He had fallen in love with a woman he thought was warm and generous, someone who championed charity because she cared. But the person standing in front of him now was a stranger, someone cold and shallow, obsessed only with appearances. "He said he had a ticket, Madison," Tyler said, his voice flat. "He said he bought one." "He was probably lying," she scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "People like that will say anything to get in." This wasn't the woman he thought he knew. This wasn't the woman he wanted to spend his life with. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow, leaving him feeling hollowed out. He turned away from her without another word, a cold knot of dread forming in his stomach. He made his way through the crowd until he found the event host, Martin Dale, standing near the raffle drum. "I need to see the ticket list," Tyler said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Martin, ever the professional, nodded and discreetly pulled up a file on his tablet. "Of course, Mr. Vaughn. What name are you looking for?" "I don't know his name," Tyler admitted, feeling a fresh pang of guilt. "But he was just here. A young black kid, maybe 17. Martin scrolled through the list. A few moments later, he stopped. "Here we are," he said, turning the tablet toward Tyler. "Jordan Carter. Ticket number 472, officially registered. Payment confirmed this morning online." Tyler's heart sank. It was true. The boy had paid. He belonged here just as much as anyone else. And Madison had humiliated him in front of hundreds of people for no reason other than her own snobbery. A quiet, resolute anger began to build inside him. He looked at the host, his eyes hard. "I want to make sure this raffle is run completely by the book," he said, his voice low and firm. "Every number has an equal chance. Understood?" "Of course, sir," Martin replied, sensing the groom's change in mood. "I mean it," Tyler reiterated, his gaze intense. "I want it to be 100% fair, no matter who wins." Meanwhile, in the bustling service corridor behind the ballroom, Elena Ruiz was anything but calm. The injustice she had witnessed burned in her mind. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling slightly with adrenaline. She had been standing close enough to the entrance to catch the entire exchange on video, her phone held discreetly at her side. She had recorded Madison's mocking laughter, her cruel words, and the look of utter devastation on Jordan's face. It was all there, a short, damning piece of evidence. She quickly found a quiet corner behind a stack of linen carts, and with a few taps, uploaded the footage to a private cloud drive. It was proof of what Madison was really like behind the perfect smile and the designer dress. She didn't know what she would do with it yet, but she knew she couldn't just let it go. She couldn't let that woman get away with it. The story of the Valerie Hope Foundation was not a story of glittering galas and wealthy donors. It was a story born of hardship and quiet dignity. It began years ago in a house not so different from the mansions many of these wedding guests called home. A young woman named Valerie Carter worked there as a maid, her hands calloused but her spirit bright. She worked for Madison Lee's family, cleaning their sprawling home with a meticulous care that went largely unnoticed. Valerie was a single mother, pouring every ounce of her energy and love into her young son, Jordan. She dreamed of a better future for him, a future where he would be judged by the contents of his character, not the color of his skin or the balance of his bank account. One year, Madison's parents hosted a grand charity event, much like this one. Valerie had been asked to work the event, serving drinks and clearing plates. During the party, a wealthy guest had misplaced a diamond earring. In the ensuing panic, suspicion had fallen unfairly and without evidence on the staff. Madison's mother, in a moment of proprietary arrogance, had singled out Valerie. The questioning was humiliating, the implication clear. The earring was later found in the guest's own clutch, but the damage was done. To avoid any embarrassment, as they called it, the family fired Valerie the next day. They had discarded her as easily as they would a broken dish. But Valerie Carter was not a broken woman. The injustice she suffered fueled a fire within her. She worked 2 jobs, saved every penny she could, and put herself through night school. She never forgot the sting of being wrongly accused, of being treated as less than human. She vowed that she would dedicate her life to helping others who were overlooked, to giving a hand up to those who society tried to push down. With the little money she had, and with the quiet, steadfast support of her husband, a brilliant and respected lawyer named Avery Carter, she started a small fund. She called it the Valerie Hope Foundation. Its mission was simple: to provide scholarships for bright, underprivileged students who needed a chance to prove their worth. It was her legacy, a testament to her belief that hope and hard work could triumph over cruelty and prejudice. After she passed away far too young, her husband, now the retired and highly respected Judge Avery Carter, continued her work. He poured his own fortune into the foundation, growing it into a significant charitable force, all while keeping his involvement anonymous. He wanted the focus to remain on Valerie's vision, not his own wealth. Tonight's wedding raffle was meant to be a culmination of that vision. It had been arranged through a series of intermediaries, a partnership with the Lee family's event that Madison had eagerly claimed as her own philanthropic triumph. She loved the prestige it brought her, the way it made her look generous and important. What she didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was the secret clause Judge Carter had embedded in the raffle's charter. The grand prize wasn't just a donation to the fund. Tonight's winner was set to inherit a controlling interest in the Valerie Hope Foundation itself. It was a detail the hosts had been instructed to omit until the final moment, designed as a stunning surprise to honor a truly generous soul. Jordan, standing in the back of the room, didn't know it yet. He didn't know that his $10 ticket was more than just a gesture of remembrance. He didn't know that destiny, guided by the quiet, loving hands of his parents, was about to swing back with the force of a tidal wave, right in his favor. Elena stood backstage, the frantic energy of the service area a stark contrast to the icy resolve that was settling in her heart. She held her phone in her hand, her thumb hovering over the send button. The video clip of Madison mocking Jordan was ready to go. It was a ticking time bomb, and she was the one holding the fuse. Her co-worker, a tired-looking man named Ben who had worked in the industry for 20 years, glanced over her shoulder. He saw the fury in her eyes and the thumbnail of the video on her screen. "Don't do it, Elena," he warned, his voice a low, cautious whisper. "You'll get fired. The Lees are powerful people. They'll make sure you never work in this city again." Ben's words were meant to be a warning, but they had the opposite effect. They solidified her decision. The thought of letting Madison's cruelty go unpunished, simply because she was rich and powerful, was more than Elena could stomach. She couldn't stand by and do nothing. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. A small, quiet act of defiance against a world that so often let the wealthy write their own rules. With a steady hand, she opened a new message. She didn't know who to send it to at first, but then she thought of the groom, Tyler. He had looked so uncomfortable during the incident. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't like his fiancée. She did a quick search online, found the name of his company's public relations manager, and attached the video file. She typed a short, simple note. "He deserves to see who she really is." Then she hit send. The message disappeared into the digital ether, A silent arrow shot into the heart of the perfect wedding. Meanwhile, Jordan lingered near the ballroom doors, the noise and the laughter from within feeling a world away. A part of him screamed to just leave, to go home and forget this night ever happened. The humiliation was a fresh, open wound, and every moment he stayed in this place felt like rubbing salt in it. He had already turned to go when a calm, familiar voice spoke his name. Jordan. He stopped, his heart skipping a beat. He turned around and saw a man step out from the shadows of the corridor. It was an older man dressed in a simple but well-tailored suit, his face kind and his eyes full of a deep, knowing wisdom. For a moment, Jordan didn't recognize him out of context, but then it clicked. "Dad?" he whispered, his voice laced with disbelief. Judge Avery Carter smiled gently at his son. He had been there all along, a quiet guardian watching from a distance. "I was invited as a guest of the Foundation's board," he explained simply, not wanting to overwhelm the boy with the full truth just yet. He placed a steadying hand on Jordan's shoulder, his touch firm and reassuring. He could see the pain and confusion in his son's eyes, the impulse to flee. "Don't go," he said, his voice soft but filled with an unshakable strength. "Your mother's foundation, her legacy, it lives through you, son. It lives in the goodness of your heart." He looked toward the ballroom doors, a flicker of something steely in his gaze. "Don't you walk away before the truth has a chance to walk in," Jordan looked at his father, at the quiet confidence in his eyes, and felt his own wavering courage begin to mend. He nodded, a silent promise passing between them. He would stay. Madison Lee was in her element. She moved through the glittering crowd like a ship in full sail, leaving a wake of compliments and fawning praise behind her. The incident with the boy was already a distant memory, a minor inconvenience that had been swiftly dealt with. In her mind, she had done nothing wrong. She had simply protected the sanctity of her exclusive event. She even joked about it with a group of her bridesmaids, her voice light and airy. "You have to be so careful these days," she said, taking a delicate sip of champagne. "It's so important to keep the riffraff out. It lowers the tone of the whole evening." Her friends giggled in agreement, completely oblivious to the fact that her cruel words were already being whispered from table to table, spreading through the room like a poison. She found her way to the front of the ballroom where a massive banner hung behind the stage. It read, "A Wedding Vow and a Charitable Heart, in partnership with the Valerie Hope Foundation." She posed next to it, her smile dazzling for the photographers. "It's just so fulfilling to give back," she said to a reporter from a local society blog, her voice filled with a practiced sincerity. "Tyler and I believe so strongly in this cause. I personally funded every dollar of this partnership. It's my passion project." The lie slid from her lips as easily as water, smooth and effortless. Across the room, Tyler's PR manager, a sharp woman named Clara, approached him with a grim look on her face. "Tyler, you need to see this," she said, her voice low. She discreetly showed him the screen of her phone. It was the video from Elena. Tyler watched it, his face growing progressively paler with each passing second. He saw it all, clear as day. Madison pointing, her mocking laughter echoing in the pristine audio, her condescending words, "Too cheap to belong here." He heard her call for security, as if she were summoning servants. And he saw the look on Jordan Carter's face, a look of such profound and public humiliation that it made his stomach churn. "The server who sent this said the boy's name is Jordan Carter," Clara whispered, her eyes filled with a professional concern. "He said the Raffle supports a scholarship fund that helped his late mother." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The Valerie Hope Foundation. Valerie Carter. Jordan Carter. He was her son. Madison had not just mocked a random teenager. She had mocked the son of the very woman whose legacy this entire event was supposed to be honoring. A cold, hard fury, unlike anything Tyler had ever felt before, settled deep in his bones. The woman he was about to marry was not just shallow. She was a fraud. Her charity was a costume she wore, and her heart was hollow. His jaw clenched so tight he felt a muscle jump in his cheek. He excused himself from his conversation, his movements stiff and controlled. He found Martin Dale, the MC, and spoke to him in a low, intense voice that left no room for questions. "The raffle," he said. "When you announce the winner, do not announce the prize. Not until I give you the signal. Do you understand?" Martin, seeing the look on the groom's face, simply nodded. The show was about to change. Judge Avery Carter stepped out onto a quiet, secluded balcony, the cool night air a welcome relief from the tense atmosphere of the ballroom. He pulled his phone from his pocket, his movements calm and deliberate. He dialed a number from his contacts, a direct line to the legal team for the Foundation's board of directors. The call was answered on the first ring. "It's Avery Carter," he said, his voice a quiet command. "We are proceeding. I need you to confirm the transfer clause is ready to be executed." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line as the lawyer presumably pulled up the relevant documents. "Confirmed, Judge," the voice came back crisp and professional. "The legal framework is in place. If ticket number 472 is drawn, the transfer of controlling interest in the Valerie Hope Foundation to the ticket holder, Mr. Jordan Carter, will proceed immediately upon verification. All documents are prepared and await your final authorization." "Excellent," the judge said, a deep sense of satisfaction in his tone. "Be ready." He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. He had set the stage. Now, all that was left was for fate to play its part. Inside, the mood was thick with anticipation. Tyler Vaughn moved through the crowd with a newfound purpose. He spotted Jordan standing nervously at the back of the room, looking profoundly out of place. Tyler walked directly to him, extending a hand. Jordan flinched slightly, expecting another confrontation, but the groom's eyes were not hostile. They were filled with a sincere, almost apologetic regret. Jordan hesitantly shook his hand. Tyler leaned in close, his voice a conspiratorial whisper that only Jordan could hear. "I am so sorry for what happened earlier," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "Please, stay. You'll want to see this." Jordan looked at him, surprised by the sudden, unexpected act of kindness. He saw the genuine remorse in Tyler's face and felt a flicker of hope. He simply nodded, his heart beginning to pound in his chest, a frantic rhythm of nerves and anticipation. He didn't know what was about to happen, but he knew something had shifted. Something big was coming. On stage, Martin Dale stepped up to the microphone, his showman's smile firmly in place. "Ladies and gentlemen, the moment has arrived," he boomed, his voice echoing through the silent ballroom. Beside him, a large, ornate raffle drum filled with thousands of tickets gleamed under the stage lights. An assistant gave the drum a dramatic spin. The tickets inside swirled and danced, a bold blizzard of paper and possibility. The sound of the spinning drum was the only noise in the vast, silent room. Every eye was fixed on it. Madison watched from the front row, a smug, expectant smile on her face, completely unaware that the world she had so carefully constructed was about to be torn apart. The drum slowed, tumbled, and then stopped. The moment of truth had arrived. Martin Dale reached into the raffle drum, his hand disappearing into the sea of tickets. He swirled them around for dramatic effect, the rustling of the paper amplified by the silent tension in the room. Finally, his fingers closed around a single ticket. He pulled it out, unfolded it with a theatrical flourish, and held it up to the light. Every guest leaned forward, holding their breath. "And the winning number for the grand prize is," he began, his voice booming. He paused, letting the suspense build until it was almost unbearable. "Number 4, 7, 2. Silence. A deep, profound silence fell over the ballroom. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the entire room had been frozen in time. Guests looked at their own tickets, then at their neighbors, a collective rustle of paper and disappointed sighs. Martin cleared his throat, his professional smile wavering slightly. "I'll repeat that," he said, his voice a little louder. "The winning number is 472. Is the winner in the room?" At the very back of the hall, Jordan Carter stared down at the ticket in his hand. His heart had stopped. The numbers, 472, seemed to glow on the page, pulsing in time with the frantic, disbelieving beat that was just now starting up again in his chest. It couldn't be. It was impossible. His hand began to tremble, and slowly, hesitantly, he raised it into the air. It was a small, shy gesture, but in the silent, watchful room, it was as dramatic as a lightning strike. A wave of gasps rippled across the crowd. Heads turned, craning to see who the winner was. Whispers erupted like wildfire. "It's him. It's that boy." The one she kicked out. Madison, who had been sitting in the front row, a champagne flute held delicately in her hand, froze mid-sip. The glass stopped just short of her lips. Her eyes widened, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. "No," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper that was lost in the growing murmur of the crowd. "That's impossible." She shot a furious glare at Tyler, as if he had somehow orchestrated this. Cameras, which had been poised to capture the joyful face of a lucky winner, now swiveled to the back of the room, their flashes illuminating Jordan's stunned expression. He looked overwhelmed, a deer caught in the headlights. But he wasn't alone. Tyler was immediately at his side, placing a firm, supportive hand on his shoulder. He looked out at the sea of shocked faces, his own expression calm and resolute. "Fair and square," he announced, his voice clear and steady, a direct challenge to his fiancée and anyone else who would doubt the result. Martin Dale, the MC, looked from Jordan to Tyler, a flicker of understanding dawning in his eyes. He recovered quickly, his professional instincts taking over. "Come on up, young man," he boomed, beckoning Jordan to the stage. As Jordan walked the long aisle toward the front, a path parting for him through the stunned guests, Martin was handed a microphone. He met Jordan halfway and handed it to him. Jordan took the microphone, his hand shaking so badly he had to grip it with both hands. He looked out at the hundreds of faces staring back at him, a blur of wealth and judgment. His throat was dry. He swallowed hard and spoke, his voice trembling but clear. "Thank you," he said softly. I just wanted to support the foundation. I hope this donation helps a lot of kids. Kids like me." Madison could stand it no longer. She shot up from her seat, her face flushed with rage. "Wait!" she cried, her voice shrill and ugly. "This is a mistake. He's not—" But Tyler cut her off, his voice as cold and sharp as breaking glass. "He's exactly who this night was supposed to be about, Madison." He stood beside Jordan, a silent, unmovable wall of support. The room fell silent once more, waiting to see what would happen next. The tension in the room was so thick it felt hard to breathe. All eyes were on the stage, on the groom standing beside the boy, and the bride frozen in a state of furious disbelief. Tyler gave Martin Dale a subtle nod, the signal. Martin took a deep breath, his expression shifting from that of a game show host to one of solemn importance. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice resonating with a new gravity. "There's something you all need to know about tonight's grand prize." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "The winner of this raffle does not just receive a monetary prize. The winner receives something far more significant." He turned to look directly at Jordan. "Tonight's winner," he declared, his voice rising, receives legal ownership and a controlling interest in the Valerie Hope Foundation. A collective, audible gasp swept through the ballroom. It was a sound of pure shock, of 100 different minds trying to process the impossible. Jaws literally dropped. Guests turned to each other, their eyes wide with disbelief. This wasn't just a raffle. It was a transfer of power. And that power had just been handed to the humiliated boy at the back of the room. Jordan's own hands began to shake uncontrollably. He stared at the MC, then at Tyler, his mind reeling. Ownership? He couldn't comprehend it. It didn't make sense. He felt the microphone in his hand, and without thinking, he spoke into it, his voice filled with a raw, trembling emotion. "My mom," he began, his voice cracking. "My mom was Valerie Carter." If the first announcement had been a shockwave, this one was a thunderclap. The whispers in the crowd erupted into a roar of astonishment. Valerie Carter's son. The boy was Valerie Carter's son. The pieces of the puzzle slammed into place with a brutal, stunning clarity. The foundation Madison had been so proudly claiming as her own was now legally in the hands of the son of the woman it was named after, the very boy she had tried to have thrown out. Madison's face, which had been flushed with anger, now turned a ghastly shade of white. The color drained from her cheeks as if a plug had been pulled. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The foundation she had used as a social accessory, the one she had bragged about controlling, now belonged to him. The boy she had called Riff-Raff. As if on cue, another figure emerged from the side of the stage. It was Judge Avery Carter. He walked with a quiet, commanding presence, his face calm, but his eyes missing nothing. He stood beside his son, his presence alone a confirmation of the truth. He took a spare microphone from the podium. "As a legal witness for the Foundation's board," he announced, his voice the steady, authoritative tone of a lifelong judge, "I can confirm that the transfer of ownership is legally binding and effective immediately." The cameras went into a frenzy. Flashes erupted from every corner of the room, a relentless, blinding strobe effect capturing Madison's utter collapse. The whispers of the guests were no longer just curious. They were judgmental, sharp, and damning. "Can you believe it?" She mocked her own donor's son. "This is a disaster." Madison stumbled backward, her hand flying to her chest as if she couldn't breathe. Her perfect world, so carefully constructed, had just shattered into 1,000,000 pieces at her feet. Tyler watched her, his face an unreadable mask of calm, resolved steel. He had made his choice. The truth spread through the ballroom and then, through the phones of every guest, out into the world. It moved with the blistering speed of a digital wildfire. Bride mocks teen at her own charity wedding. Before the night was even over, the story was already taking shape, a viral narrative of hubris and poetic justice. Madison stood frozen in the spotlight, the flashes of the cameras feeling like physical blows. She tried to reclaim her composure, to muster the dazzling smile that had always been her greatest weapon. She turned to the nearest reporter, her voice a desperate, cracking plea. "It's all a misunderstanding," she stammered, a frantic, unconvincing laugh escaping her lips. "A joke. It was just a little joke that went wrong." But no one was laughing. No one was buying it. Tyler stepped forward, his face a grim mask of disappointment. He shook his head slowly, his eyes locking with hers. There was no love left in them, only a profound, bottomless pity. "A joke, Madison?" he said, his voice quiet but carrying across the silent room. "You mocked a child. You humiliated the son of the woman whose memory you were pretending to honor. You did it for your own ego in the name of a charity you never truly cared about." He turned away from her then, addressing the stunned event staff. "The reception is over," he announced, his voice ringing with a final, unshakable authority. "Please escort Ms. Lee's family and her entourage out. The wedding is off." The words hung in the air, a death sentence for the life Madison had envisioned. Reporters rushed forward, a pack of wolves sensing blood. Microphones and cameras were thrust in her face. "Ms. Lee, is it true you tried to have him removed? What will happen to your partnership with the foundation now? How does it feel to have your wedding end in scandal?" The questions were a relentless barrage. The flashes were blinding. Her perfect dream had become a public, humiliating nightmare. She burst into tears, the ugly, splotchy sobs of someone who has lost everything. She turned to Tyler, grabbing his arm, her carefully manicured nails digging into the fabric of his suit. "Tyler, please," she begged, her voice a pathetic, broken whisper. "Fix this. You have to fix this." He looked down at her hand on his arm and then back at her tear-streaked face. He felt nothing, the love, the affection. It had all been burned away, leaving behind only the cold ashes of disgust. He gently removed her hand from his arm. "Some things, Madison," he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "Money can't fix." He then turned his back on her and walked away, leaving her alone to face the consequences of her own cruelty. Tyler walked back onto the stage, a space that now felt more like a courtroom than a wedding venue. He took the microphone, his movements deliberate and calm. A hush fell over the remaining guests as he prepared to speak. He looked out at the crowd, his gaze sweeping over the curious, shocked faces. "This night was never meant to be about luxury," he declared, his voice strong and clear, resonating with a conviction that held everyone captive. It was never about a fancy dress or an expensive party. It was supposed to be about legacy. It was supposed to be about honoring the memory of a good woman, Valerie Carter, by continuing her work. He turned and gestured toward Jordan, who was standing beside his father, looking small and overwhelmed, but also, for the first time, like he truly belonged. "This night is about him," Tyler said. "It's about Jordan Carter." He extended a hand. "Jordan, would you come up here? I believe you have something to say." He invited Jordan forward, not as a raffle winner, but as the rightful heir to his mother's dream. Judge Carter gave his son a gentle, encouraging push forward. Jordan walked to the center of the stage, his initial trembling now replaced by a quiet, newfound strength. He took the microphone from Tyler and looked out at the room. He wasn't just a boy in thrift store clothes anymore. He was the owner of the Valerie Hope Foundation. I don't have a big speech planned," he began, his voice soft but steady. "I just want to thank my mom. She taught me that you don't need a lot of money to be rich in spirit. She believed in hope, and she believed in giving people a chance." His eyes then scanned the room until he found the kind-faced waitress, Elena, who was watching from the sidelines, tears welling in her eyes. "I also want to thank someone else," Jordan said, a small, genuine smile touching his lips. "The waitress who brought me a glass of water when I was sitting outside. She was the only person who treated me kindly tonight when she didn't have to. Thank you." A warm, genuine round of applause broke out, a stark contrast to the earlier polite clapping. It was a sound of true admiration. Jordan continued, his confidence growing with every word. "As the new head of this foundation, my first act is this. I'm donating a portion of the foundation's annual funds to create a bonus program for the catering and events staff who work so hard behind the scenes at events like this one. And another portion will go to establishing new youth programs right here in this community, so that more kids can get the support they need." The guests were on their feet now, the applause thunderous and heartfelt. They were no longer just attendees at a wedding. They were witnesses to a profound moment of grace and justice. From the side of the stage, Judge Avery Carter watched his son, his face beaming with a father's immense pride. In that moment, Jordan Carter was not a boy who had been mocked. He was the unexpected, unassuming, and undeniable heart of the entire event. In the days that followed, the story became a viral sensation. News clips and headlines replayed the dramatic moments over and over again. Bride mocked black teen. He ends up owning her charity. The video Elena had taken was leaked, and the world saw Madison's cruelty for themselves. Her social media empire crumbled overnight. Her sponsorships were pulled, and she vanished from public view, her name becoming a cautionary tale about the high cost of arrogance. The Valerie Hope Foundation, however, entered a new and promising chapter. Jordan Carter, with the wise guidance of his father, Judge Avery Carter, stood before a press conference, not in a glittering ballroom, but at a local community center. He was there to officially relaunch the foundation, its mission renewed and its purpose clarified. Standing beside him was a new partner, a man who had pledged a significant portion of his own tech fortune to the cause. Tyler Vaughn. He had found a charity he could truly believe in, and a purpose beyond his own success. And as the new communications director for the foundation, honored for her integrity and courage, stood Elena Ruiz. She had been offered the job by Jordan personally, a testament to the fact that one small act of kindness can change the course of a life. The narrator's voice closes the story, a simple and powerful truth for a world that often forgets. In a world obsessed with status, never forget, kindness costs nothing, but cruelty can cost you everything. The final image is of Jordan smiling. He's standing in the new foundation office, holding a photograph of his mother. It's a simple picture, but it is now framed in gold, a symbol of a legacy not just remembered, but reborn. If this story about dignity and justice moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. What would you have done in this situation? Let us know below.